It's open.
Tonight's story is somewhat unique and calls for a different kind of introduction.
Who's gone off? Today we are canceling the apocalypse!
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet.
And this is?
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Houston, we have a problem.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Now, where was I?
Welcome to episode 128 of the Blokebusters podcast. I'm Paul, and today we're going to be talking about the film Space Sweepers. And many of you are probably going, I'm sorry, what? And acceptable. I can understand that some people might not know what that is. But before we actually dive into what that is, I should probably introduce the person that's going to help talk about it. So, I was able to run into this gentleman online relatively recently and got talking with the guy, and it turns out he quite likes science fiction. So I thought, why not have him on? And without any further ado, it is Robert from Science Fiction Remnant podcast. How are you doing, sir?
Doing great. How you doing?
I'm not too shabby. Yeah, actually, for people that know me personally listening to this, there may be one or two, I just took delivery today of the cabinets for our kitchen remodel. So I am sitting in the space that is now completely filled with boxes of cabinets and shelving and things like that. So my space is going to be crowded and noisy for the next couple of weeks. However, today, doing all right.
Awesome. Well, there's a good side to that, you know. Eventually that's going to get settled and everything's going to look nice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Something we've been talking about for a little while and finally actually happening. So, as a result of the pandemic, whose name we shall not bother mentioning on this podcast, just because people have heard it enough already. We actually ordered everything in January, and it was supposed to turn up at our house early April.
Wow!
And it didn't. So it has turned up today. But yes, halfway there. Now we just got to get the damn thing built. But we'll get there.
Better late than never.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And so yes, before we dive straight in as well, just a quick reminder for anyone listening or first-time listeners, for this podcast here, if you want to discuss anything we're about to talk about or might talk about or have talked about or anything like that, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at Blokebusters. You can go to blokebusters.com, look at the lovely website. We are members of the All Ports Open Network, which are a fantastic group of guys and gals there, so do go check all of them out as well. You can find us there. However, you have found us here, and we are now going to dive into Space Sweepers. Now, this film was directed by Jo Sung-hee, and I do apologize, I'm probably going to butcher at least one or two names as we go through this, because I am not a Korean native, and therefore I am never 100% sure on how to pronounce the names. And I'm also partially deaf, so it makes it even more difficult for me to hear the names even when I'm watching the film. So it can get very interesting. However, yes, directed by, hopefully you said it right, Jo Sung-hee, and there was a reported budget of roughly, when translated into American dollars, $21.2 million.
Wow.
And it was supposed to be released last year, but it wasn't. And then it was going to be released later last year, and then it wasn't. And so Netflix were like, yeah, we're going to buy the right to this. So it came out on Netflix on February 5th, which means there is no box office as of right now. Only numbers that we can point to. And I will say that the viewership for this film. It debuted at number 1 in at least 16 countries, including, South Korea and France, Malaysia, Croatia, and the Philippines. And it has been in Netflix's daily top 10 rankings for 80 countries upon its premiere. And it got 26 million household viewers in the first 28 days.
Wow. Amazing.
So, it seems to have done well from that. And obviously we are going to talk about it now. So, my first question then to you is, how did you first hear about this film?
Well, I heard this film a while back, and I had the film on my list of to-watch movies, just like most people do on Netflix. And
the list, yes.
The list. If you're familiar with the list, movies can get lost. And it only took me talking to you to realize that I had this movie on the list that I have never watched since it released. And I was planning to after seeing those trailers. And
yes.
Oh my God. This is, if you're a sci-fi lover, this is it. This is the movie. It was amazing.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's apparently has been regarded as the first Korean space blockbuster, which, fair enough. This film, I saw a trailer for it. It must have been at the end of last year, I think, is when they officially released the trailer for it. And my initial reaction from just seeing the trailer was, this kind of seems like the sort of Korean version of a space kind of Western theme, sort of inspired by Firefly type stuff. Like, that was the feel I was getting, especially when it comes to, like, it was quite clear that it was the crew of this ship that wasn't, it wasn't the sleek ship. It wasn't. It's not your Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that. It's this ship that holding itself together, as it were, and they're getting up to hijinks and stuff. And I was very much getting flashbacks to when I first found out about Firefly, and going into that, and then I was like, you know what, I'm probably going to like this, especially when I saw some of the effects in the trailer were really good. Now, as we all know, effects in the trailer are not necessarily the effects you'll see in the finished product. Yeah. So I did have a healthy amount of skepticism that the entire film would probably not live up to the polish of the trailer. And I will say I've come away from it. If I were to attempt to describe it to someone without giving away any of the plot, I have landed on this film feels like the live action version of a Korean based anime that is kind of set as a space western. Like, that's what I got.
Very, very interesting you said that, because I got Cowboy Bebop vibes.
Yeah, very much so. I haven't seen all of Cowboy Bebop. I'm still at the I've seen the first few episodes, and then stuff got in the way, so I haven't yet finished it. No, very much so. Like that kind of setting is. I mean, especially from what the opening is before they actually get into the meat of the plot. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. But space scavengers. There's not a huge amount less.
Yeah, it's not, and for all of you who actually has seen Cowboy Bebop and eventually watched this movie, I get vibes. It's not like this. It's similar in certain things, but it's not in all aspects of it. But I was watching this, and it was just like, and it adds to the pleasantry of watching and enjoying this movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's really interesting as I was watching it, like what I was getting out of it, because just through watching it, it was like, okay, they seem to have straddled that line of, live action, it's serious, they've got all this stuff. However, they have that slight humor in it that you would expect from an anime of the over exaggeration, like the slightly over the top reaction to things and stuff like that. Like they've got those in here, but it's not so on the nose that you feel like they're overacting. Like it's a very strange sort of like hypocritical view when you're looking at it. It's like, they're technically overacting, but it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, and you know, for most of you that have listened to me before, you'll be surprised with the statement that I'm about to make, but I watch a lot of what they call K-drama or Korean TV, and I really enjoy those shows. I have not watched lately, but watching this, I can see all those aspects of, within TV created for Korean TV, and all the aspects that I enjoy of watching those TV shows is all into this movie. So I was going to say, if you enjoy K-drama or Korean TV, you're really going to enjoy this film.
Right. Yeah, and it's something where I myself have not seen any Korean TV, at least to my knowledge. I have not seen any Korean TV. However, I would say watching this, I was definitely getting the feeling that this is from that side of the world. Like, and not just because the majority of the cast were either Korean or even European. It seems, but
in the cast, I want to add this for your audience members who have maybe watched K-dramas before. There was this particular drama that it was in 2016, Korean TV that I watched the entire season. It's called Descendants of the Sun. Really great drama. The main star of Descendants of the Sun is the pilot in this film. Great actor. That's the first thing that I saw when I saw the trailer, and I saw the guy. It's like, oh my God, he's one of my favorite actors.
Well, and very, very randomly as well, just in looking up some of the other people that were in it, because the main cast to really shine a light. So Song Joong-ki, I believe I'm saying that right, is Kim Tae-ho, who is the main character, and then you've got Kim Tae as Captain Jang, and then you've got this one I might mess up, Jin Seong-kyu, I think, as Tiger Park, which is a fantastic name.
Oh yes.
Yoo Hae-jin as the robot Bubs, and then randomly Richard Armitage is in this thing. For those of you that are like, oh, I know the name, like, what's he in? For British people, the thing you're going to most equate him with, and this is going to sound completely weird to anyone not from England and who hasn't seen this show, he is the person that, and spoilers for the show, the person that Geraldine Granger from The Vicar of Dibley ends up marrying at the end of this series. It's like, he's only in it for those final episodes, but it's like, if you haven't seen Spooks or Strike Back, which were popular, but The Vicar of Dibley was like the big thing, like a big staple of English comedy, especially in the 90s. So he was in that. He's also Thorin Oakenshield in the Hobbit film. So he's the dwarf prince in that.
Wow.
And then he's just in this. It's like all of these other people that are in it. It's like, okay, you've got this English guy to play the main antagonist, and very much villain. Yeah, we'll probably get into that in a bit. But yeah, the other one that I found so weird, just in doing a little bit of research, there is a French guy called Pierre, who is he has an unrequited love for the captain of the ship, and he is an American actor who moved to Seoul and to begin his acting career. Oh, wow. So yeah, he was born in Chicago and then just moved to Seoul and became an actor. So yeah, not French at all, which actually I wanted to ask you about this because you mentioned that you watched this first in English. So I'm assuming you just watched it like the English language dub. Did you watch it with or without subtitles?
I don't like subtitles. The one reason is because it kind of bothers me when I see them translating something that I know is not right, and even without translating, when even as a hearing aid for hearing impaired, even at that, sometimes they don't really put in the words, verbatim. Right. So I watched it in English without the subtitles, and then I watched it in Spanish. I understand Spanish. And my next thing is I'm going to watch it in Korean because I always watch all my K-drama in Korean, and I understand some of the words. But the reason why I wanted to do that is because it becomes very apparent when you watch this film that they get you into this world where all of the languages are intertwined. So everybody talks to everybody, different languages, but they have translators. So it is very interesting, and I don't think I can recall a movie that had tried to do this in that manner. I mean, there have been movies before that have done it, but not in this manner before. And I think that is clever of this movie.
Yeah. Now, I'll say I watched this because I am very much a champion of sub, not dub. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously I have said before, and I will say again, there are several examples of excellent dubs of things from foreign language. For instance, in my personal opinion, the English dub of the Ghost in the Shell TV show is just as good as watching it in the original Japanese. Mm-hmm. And that's actually how I came to it, and I feel that the voice actor did a fantastic job. Now, in general, if I get the option of listening to it first in its original language and having subtitles, that is what I'll do. And not the least because subtitles do not bother me at all. I am, as I mentioned, partially deaf in both ears, so I actually am used to watching English things with the English subtitles because, especially if people are whispering, I find it very difficult to hear what they're saying. Mm-hmm. Because in TV shows, if someone is whispering, the music does not go down. They are just whispering into the ambient noise. And something that I realize a lot of people don't know about people who might be hearing impaired is that oftentimes if someone is talking at the same volume as another noise, it can start getting incredibly difficult to pass them out and to sort of ignore the background noise and only hear the voice.
Oh wow!
And also something that I did not realize until Adam Savage actually mentioned on his podcast is that if you're talking to someone who has any sort of hearing impairment and they do not hear what you said, either it's too loud or they weren't necessarily paying attention the first time and you were trying to call to them or whatever, if when they ask you to say it again, you say it again at the same volume, it is harder for them to hear it than it was the first time.
Oh, wow.
And it's just something about the way the brain works. It's because they couldn't hear it the first time. The brain expects that if it's the same noise again, you still can't hear it. Like, it doesn't work. So you actually have to talk louder the next time. So for me, whenever I'm coming across this particular instance in a show or a film where someone is whispering and there's ambient noise, so I can't hear what they're saying, it doesn't matter how many times I'm going to rewatch it, I'm not going to hear what they're saying. So very often, but only if I'm watching a film by myself, because my wife does not like reading subtitles, I will watch something with the subtitles on so that I'm not going to miss anything if someone decides to speak quietly, or if the music happens to go into hypergear, as it often does
And that,
in action films.
That makes a lot of sense. It actually, to take it a little further, it even happens on sometimes when you're watching a film, because of the ambient noise or the music behind the scenes. And I've seen it where I had to actually rewind it and put the titles on because I couldn't quite get what they said. So I can understand that part as well too. But yeah, this is something that I did not know, and it makes a lot of sense.
It's something that I've told a couple of people before, and you can just see that like click in their head of, oh, something just made a lot of sense to them. So I watched this in the original language, and as you pointed out, there are many people talking many different languages. So in this film, there is the Korean people speaking in Korean, or I apologize if that is not the official name for the dialect, but I do not know it off the top of my head if there is another one. There are people who speak in English. There are people who speak in what I believe is sort of an Afrikaan style English accent. There are people who in subtitles were speaking German, but I don't believe they were. And there's the guy who speaks with a French accent, but also speaks in English and speaks in French sometimes. So there are many times where I was watching it and they didn't subtitle the people speaking in English because they were speaking in English, even though I had it set to Korean with the subtitles. But luckily I was listening to it on headphones and it was working out quite well that I could hear everything that was being said. It was really fascinating to me. The more I was going through that, I was like, at no point do they have ingrained subtitles in the film, if you know what I mean. Because some films would do that, especially if it was them talking in, let's say it was an English film, and then anytime anyone was speaking in a different language, there would be huge subtitles that are obviously ingrained in the film itself.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't do that at all. It's entirely based on which subtitle group you're looking at, and if you even want subtitles for what's being said. So it was fascinating to me to see that, because, like you say, I don't think I've seen a film that does that before, and it so accurately represents what it would be like for everyone to get out there. And even speaking technology-wise, we have those sort of translators now. Like, there are earbuds you can buy that will translate up to 40 different languages in real time. So
that's wild.
If everyone is wearing those, as they would be in this type of situation, there is no point where you would be unable to understand everyone because everyone has these translators. Yeah. Actually, I don't know how interested in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy you are. It's not come up yet in our conversation, but the idea of the Babel fish, Douglas Adams created that, which is a fish that goes in your ear and feeds off your brain waves. However, it gives you the ability to instantly understand any form of verbal communication uttered by any sentient being. And the reason he created that was he didn't want to invent the technology for it. He didn't want it to be something where it might go away or anything like that. So he's like, sod it. Here's something that will make you understand every language. Now I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so it was really interesting to see, like, you could tell everyone had all these Bluetooth headsets in, basically, and the way that they explained it away was probably, again, just one of the best little bits of exposition without just an info dump that I've seen in a long time, when it opens with the main character going to see someone who then starts complaining that their translator is not working.
Yeah.
Like, that's it's like the opening 30 seconds of the film. Basically, and they're like, oh, so that explains, oh, we're not gonna hang a lantern on this one, okay, we're moving on. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, no, I was very impressed from the beginning on some of the choices that they made and everything. So one thing I actually want to get onto first is something that people that have been listening to this podcast for a long time will be absolutely shocked to hear me say, which is, I want the soundtrack to this film. I want it now.
Oh, nice.
And I want to listen to it again, because my God, the music and even just the ambient sounds in this film were perfect.
Very, very immersive. I loved it. It's really amazing.
Gets you just so invested. Anytime they were performing any kind of, like, fantastic maneuver in their spaceship, it was just accompanied by this awesome either electronic sound or even just kind of like almost felt like a sort of old school alternative rock at times, like just some of the heavy beats that were coming out of it. Like, it was just phenomenal. I am going to watch this film again probably next week, because I have a couple of things coming up that I need to do first. But yeah, I'm gonna be rewatching this thing just for that, just to get into it, because I don't know if you have any specific examples, but I will say the first time that you get to see Taiho driving and the maneuvers that he's pulling off and the music in that piece, like that was like, holy shit. that was such a fantastic moment for me, and it really made me realize that the music is going to be as big a part of this as anything else. And for me, like, that's saying something, because the soundtrack has always been, for me, as I say, being partially deaf, has always been the least important part of the film. And not trying to put down any composers or anyone or anything like that for any of the other films I've seen. It's just that because of my particular handicap for when I'm watching the films, that has always been the least important part. And yet in this, it's just it was just as big a thing as anything else in the film.
It helps in the immersion, and especially towards the beginning of the movie, when he was doing a maneuver to try to escape the other space sweepers, and the type of flying that he was doing, especially when he went through the station and not touching anything and going through this thing that it was just turning around, which, for all of us who are like realists, we know that this is not even possible. This is not how you do it in space, but it doesn't matter. The way that it was done, it was pure action, and that music, that score just helped in just make you part of that scene. It was. I remember when I watched this for the first time. That scene, I was actually grasping my chair because it's that much of a it was just awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I watched it on my laptop, and I was just sitting watching it, and I was on my sofa, and like I say, I realized at the end of that scene that I had been grasping the edge of the sofa a little tighter than needed. And it was like, okay, yeah, you got me.
It makes you feel like you're inside the ship and you're trying to hold on because it's going way too fast.
Yeah, yeah, it's masterfully done. Again, nothing but praise for the music there and the soundtrack. And every single time there's any one of these things, and the music just amps up, like it's such a perfect fit for those scenes, and as people have pointed out, like say Christopher Nolan, he does fantastic films, he does fantastic scenes, and fantastically shot. However, you can't exactly say that the man is versatile with his music choices. Yeah, he brought the bois into the film lexicon, and then he just kept using them and everything. Whereas this, like, even though the music is all kind of the same genre, like it's they don't stray into jazz at any point during the film, but every single scene feels different. Every single scene sounds different, and that's something that's really interesting to me, because I actually noticed that. Again, yeah, I don't normally, but I did for this one. So yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
Now, I was gonna say, if you didn't have anything else to add, but it sounds like you do, I'll ask the question that I was going to ask, and then if you wanted to add something else, go ahead, and then we'll jump to it. So, so while you're continuing to talk about that, my next question was going to be, who was your favorite character in this film?
Interesting. They were all, I mean, the cast, and this is how I felt slightly like this is very familiar with like Cowboy Bebop, because if you're familiar with a TV show, you kind of get you fall in love with the cast, and the great thing is that they all have their own personality. I would have to say the robot if I have to pick one. Because I don't know, it's just the non-care attitude, that I am here to try to save you kind of attitude. I just found it kind of funny, especially when she said, all these grown adults and I'm the one that has the money. I can't remember the exact quote, but that was just, it got a chuckle out of me. But if you watch this movie, you realize why I find it so hard to I'm picking the robot right now because I had to pick someone. But if you watch this and you realize why it's so hard to actually pick one, because you fall in love with the entire crew of this ship,
Yeah, no, it's fascinating watching it because, and again, like it's not it's not apples to apples comparison, but I believe you are familiar with the Red Dwarf TV show, but the way that the crew just seemed to work in the ship, and it was clear they'd been working together for a while, and they may all have their own goals and their own personalities, but they just still kind of work as a team. Like I was getting Red Dwarf-esque vibes off of this with the characters, and so it's very difficult to pick. However, I was going to say Bubs as well, definitely my favorite, if only because there was never a point in this when I was looking at Bubs and thinking, oh, that's a CG character.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone who is entirely a CG character, that takes some doing, and the personality that they assigned to it, the polish that they had for the graphics in it, and even just some of the scenes where Bubs is harpooning other ships and just flying around, definitely, I think my favorite shots in the film are Bubs using the harpoon in space.
Oh yeah.
Just because of just how solid those shots are, and just the little reactions, and obviously we will be doing spoilers for the film, so this is probably the first thing that could even be classed as a spoiler so far. Is when Bubs's harpoon breaks.
Oh yeah.
And you feel that moment when Bubs even says, my harpoon. It's oh wow, yeah, this, and then still goes ahead and uses that damn thing, and yeah, so well done. And there's a point towards the end when half of Bubs is crushed, and you really are worried about them. So yeah, no, it's interesting. Also, I don't know how they voiced it in English or in Spanish, but the entire point for Bubs is they are looking to have their a skin graft so that they can both look human and be female.
Yes.
But in the Korean audio of it, throughout, as far as I could tell, throughout the film until and even at the end, voiced by a man.
Yes.
So this very deep male voice for this character that identifies as female, and it was so interesting for that. And another real part of this robot just wants to be just this other thing. It just wants to just wants to identify itself as female, and have a body that that she doesn't have at this point in time. And it's so interesting that they put that in there, and again, something that a lot of Western films seem to struggle with is if you have a character like that,
and
you don't need to shine a spotlight on it in every scene and have them complaining about one other aspect of the fact that they are not this way and they need to change for everything to be better. And it's no, I mean, this character's drive is that they want money.
Mm-hmm.
That's the drive. The end goal is obviously to look human and to be female, but for the most part, the most important thing is the money.
Yes. Yes.
So again, I love the fact that it was such a non-thing in this film that everyone's just yes, we know, yes, if we all want money, it's fine.
I keep on referring to the robot as a her, and speaking from the Spanish and the English track, they did the same. They accomplished their job because it sounded male, but
Correct.
after I realized that she, notice how I'm still doing it right now, she, I don't call it it, because that would be what a robot would be, but I kept on calling it she all throughout the movie. And and then she said it in one of those occasions that she wants to be very feminine. And I think in one of the conversations that she was having is she said that she found a skin graft that she can have done in the black market for, I think it was $2,000, but she didn't want to do it because she's afraid that they would laugh at her. And I would guess that, because based on what I saw when she was looking at the computer monitor, There was the skin draft normally costs, I think the cheapest one that I saw on the the monitor was $30,000. There was one for 40 and there was one for 80. So based on that, and the fact that she said she can get that done for $2,000, I would understand why she says that they would probably laugh at her, because it might not be the best type of job that she can do,
Right.
but it's all she could do at that moment. But she chose not to because she's, that's feared. She wants to be feminine, and having people laugh at her because of some botch job might not be something she wanted it to do.
Yeah. And yeah, it's interesting at the end, and you got to see her new body.
Oh,
And-
that was awesome.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
awesome.
That's so well done. And the conversation that she has with Dorothy, or Codnim, whichever name you want to go with, and it's just like, look, here are the voices I can, like, this one's fine, like, whatever, and then Codnim basically says, well, no, I like you with this voice, and she's just like, well, yeah, but I want a different voice.
Just pick one of those.
Yeah. But yeah, the interesting thing that I found with this film is, number one, like we've mentioned, just the sort of multiculturalness to the film, again, was such a non-thing. It's like, yeah, this is what it's like. There was no explanation about all of the countries ended up working for the space race or things like that. Like, yeah, there was nothing about that. It was just, you're straight into it, and this one group of people speak French. This one group of people speak Russian. This one group of people speak Korean. And yeah, that was so well done. And then, yeah, I don't know. Once again, I'd say the English person is playing the villain. I don't know what it is about English people. We seem to be constantly being hired as the villains in some of these films. But yeah, I think it was really fascinating to watch the progression of Sullivan as the villain, because you knew from the start that he was going to be the villain. Like, just based on the fact he's running the place, like, I believe it's like he's 150 something years old, if I'm remembering correctly. But he looks like he's 40, if that. And there's zero explanation as to why. At that point, and he's just talking about how everything is going to be great. Look, we've started doing all of this stuff, it's all working fine. And you realize, well, yeah, it's good for him, it's good for the people living on this little pristine chunk of rock in space, but for everyone else down on Earth, it's terrible. And to see basically the descent into madness that he has, actually, one thing I was going to ask you, maybe for one of the dubs they throw in a line or something, that, because as with a lot of dubs, they tend to add extra information into the lines because they feel that the audience might not get it. For instance, in several animes, in the Japanese, they will, they'll have the lines, and if you have the subtitled version, like, you'll read that, and a lot of the stuff that they do can be inferred from either things that have happened or from general knowledge of the way things work in Japan or in those circumstances, whereas the dubs will literally spell out what's going on. So did they have any sort of line that explained where his, I'm assuming, nanobots came from, and where where he got the stuff that his obviously prolonging his life, but also turning him into this weird sort of skin bubbly monster type guy.
I think the one thing, and I have not watched the Korean version like you have, but I think the one thing that I am happy about and not necessarily good for the conversation is they actually accomplish, it seems to me, the right thing in a way that they were not able to give out any extra information except for maybe a way that a word or two gets translated differently.
Okay.
So it seems to me like the Korean is very similar to what the English and Spanish dubs were, where they were just, giving you the information. And I would venture to say that the reason why I want to watch mainly the Korean version is because as I watch it in English and Spanish, I noticed that the way the movie was intended, I was kind of missing the essence of it. And I guess that's kind of why you would probably watch an anime in the original Japanese. But if you notice, especially from, I like to call Cowboy Bebop being the pioneer in this, because of the great actors they hired from that anime on, most, and I say most because you still find some that are not good at all, most animes are great in English because of that, that pioneer, how Cowboy Bebop was created. And I think this movie had the same effect, if that makes any sense, where it doesn't matter, aside from some minor differences in the translation, but watching it in Spanish, English, or Korean would give you the similar sense. But I noticed there's some, and I don't know, maybe this is because I watched a lot of K-drama or Korean TV, and I understand some of the words. The dialect is a little different to translate because some words would mean something, but it would mean something different depending on the context. So I'm very, very curious to listen to that in Korean and see if I can pick up any of those things. I definitely could not pick it up from English or Spanish.
Yeah, it'll be interesting then. I will be intrigued to talk with you later once you've seen it in Korean to see what you pick up that's different. Yeah. Now, one thing I do not know about you at this point is, do you yourself have any children?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So, what was your your take on the story of Taiho and Suni and everything that happened there? Like, did that hit you hard, or like,
let me explain something that you probably not necessarily know, but maybe the listeners to my podcast might know because I has mentioned this in the past, especially on our Black Mirror episode. I am an empath, so when I watch a movie, I have to be careful that the movie is not extremely sad. Because when I watch a property, I take it personal. Right. So if something happens that is sad, I feel it, deep. And I don't, not necessarily. To give an example, the episode that we recorded on Black Mirror, if you listen through the episode, Giancarlos mentions that he looked at my heart monitor, and my heart monitor kept the lowest at 120 beats per minute. So, yeah. Now, with that being said, I took it really hard because not only because I'm an empath, but also because I'm a dad.
Yeah.
And yes, there were some tears. There were definitely some tears there. But I think it adds to the story. And I don't know how you're going to get to, I'm afraid to give out anything about the story until we're ready for it. But I think that what makes, and this is another thing that Giancarlo's left at me for, because I enjoy happy endings. I don't like when I watch a movie and then at the end the main protagonist dies, right? And he laughs at me because I do like those types of movies. Well, this movie has a happy ending, but because of the struggles and because of what happened to him and his daughter, that was very tragic, makes that ending so much sweeter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because anyone that has been listening to the podcast for a long time knows that in general, I'm a heartless bastard. Especially at the beginning, a few years of this podcast, I would watch anything, and people would be talking about feeling sad, and it's just like, well, I mean, I guess you can feel that way if you want. Like, I wouldn't get it. However, I will freely admit that ever since becoming a dad and all of that, like, I now understand a lot more of the things that had completely eluded me before. I always have struggled to be able to understand, like, how other people might be feeling, or like really, really struggled with, like, and this is the heartless bastard part, like caring about the plight of others and things like that, because I'm completely unable to empathize with someone if I've not been through the same thing. However, ever since becoming a dad, even though I can't necessarily empathize with exactly what he's going through, like, I'm able now to understand what it might feel like. And to see those things happen on screen to children now, don't like it. So like, watching this and seeing, and for those of you listening that might be a little surprised that I haven't actually gone into too much detail about it yet, like, I am genuinely holding some of this back because I'm going to be suggesting that everyone listening to this watch this film, and I don't want to give too much of it away, which is, again, very different to what we normally do on this, but I'm gonna have like a final thing to say at the end of this that will kind of sum up my feelings on that. But yeah, the things that happened to Suni and the way that his character handles it, like, it's really gripping, and something that they don't go into for a while. So you get to see his reaction to Dorothy, as she is known at the beginning, and it seems odd. Like, it's a bit of a weird reaction, like, if you think about it. And then it's about 30-40 minutes later that we find out, oh, that's why he's reacting this way, because it's reminding him of his daughter, and, well, their daughter, it's really, really interesting to me how they were able to do that, and like, in this film that is about such fantastical, epic, like, action adventure, and they were able to get so much heart into it. Like, it was astounding to me, because and it's probably just because I can't think of an English language film that I've seen that has managed to thread that line as well as this one did.
Yeah.
And it's such a breath of fresh air to have watched this film.
This film is definitely unique.
Yeah.
You have to experience it for yourself, and I'm curious. I truly want to know what other people have to say about this film, because it is that unique, that film.
Yeah, really, it's so unique, and something that I'm intrigued by is, and I don't know if you know this, they are making a second film.
Oh yes, bring it on!
Yeah.
Bring it on! I so want a part 2 to this thing.
Yeah. Now at this time, based on what I've found, which isn't much, they have not yet announced if all of the main cast are coming back, or even if any of the main cast come back. However, I'll be honest, I can't see a second film doing that well without getting them back. So at the very least, getting the main 4 back.
And I can tell you something about that. In Korean drama, and it's very different than how the TV series are done here, which it has its pro and its cons. Like for example, here when you have a TV show, you sell that TV show to the studio by the pilot, and then they buy on X episodes. Maybe they buy a season, because right now I think what they're doing is they're buying seasons. If the ratings are not good, you don't get renewed, so you don't have a season 2.
Right.
How they do it in Korea is they get a buy-in on the entire season as the original work. So that's, and I don't know if you have seen this, but if you go through all the properties on Korean TV shows, you'll notice that they don't have, for the most part, there's always exceptions. You don't have season 1, season 2, season 3. That it's not even part of. You find maybe 1 or 2 they have maybe a season 2, but I would venture to say 90% of the TV is just the name. There's no seasons, and for those few that you find they have maybe part 2 or season 2, most of the cast doesn't come back. So I'm kind of curious to see if this is going to replicate into the movies, because it seems like then they record everything and they release it, which I think is very dangerous. There was a TV show that I was watching that has to be put on hold for, I think it was 2 or 3 months, because one of the cast members had an accident during filming. So they film and they release. They film and they release. It's not like here where they film everything and then they release it slowly. So they do things a little different. But I wonder if this method of filming in Korea will translate to film, especially when we're talking about a streaming media like Netflix. Because to be honest with you, I agree with you. This film, if they don't have the entire cast, and I'm not saying the entire cast meaning everybody in the movie. I just want the main crew of that film. If they're not in, I don't think this part 2 might do as good as the film that we just watched, because there's that chemistry. And I think that made it, I think a film was so great because of that chemistry.
Yeah, it's interesting because they have, based on what I found, which is an article that was written yesterday, they have announced that the preparations for the sequel have started, and that the sequel to, and I believe, again, I'm attempting to read something that is the English letters version of the name from Korean, and it's Jeongriho is what it was called in Korean. The only thing that they have announced so far is that the VFX supervisors from the original will be working on this new thing, and that the producers kind of want to make it into a series, either like with it including a sequel. So I think when they say series, they mean franchise.
Yes.
In this article. So I can see it being, they'll make a series of films, and then probably it can be either it's going to be the progression of the crew of the ship, and maybe in the second film 1 or 2 of them will leave. I can actually see Bubs leaving, I can see that being a thing, and maybe like Bubs would leave at the end of the next one, like once she reached a point where she feels satisfied, you know, like in and everything. But yeah, I am both really interested in seeing the sequel, but trying to temper my expectation because, as you say, there is no guarantee that the original cast will come back, and I really want them to. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. Go ahead.
Yeah, and those actors, they pump shows like there's no tomorrow. So it is possible that, you know, they will reach out to them and they might be busy with another project. And they have to either postpone the movie or do it without them. And that happens even in Hollywood. We did an episode on, our latest episode is on The Wrath of Khan, and it almost happened to Ricardo Montalban when they wrote the script, and I think people completely forgot to, hey, maybe we should call him, and then they wrote the script with him in it. And then someone realized, oh crap, we gotta reach out and see if he is either willing or either want to do or can do. Because remember, at that time he was doing Fantasy Island. So locally for us, he was able to manage, and they were able to work around Fantasy Island. But you know, it happens everywhere. It happens in Hollywood, where the actors are busy doing other things. And it would be up to the studios to decide if they want to postpone it for this actor or if they want to just replace it and get the thing going, because, you know, it's all about the money in the end, at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the next one will, going at this with a somewhat optimistic viewpoint, the next one should be absolutely fine, released in cinemas, and everything will be okay. So we'll actually get a box office. So yes, definitely the end goal here will be to churn something out probably quickly, and get it so that they can actually see some really viable profits. I mean, obviously Netflix buying it and, you know, getting the distribution rights and all of that, Netflix probably covered the budget for this thing, and then some. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see more, at least from the studio that made this, the effects people that made this, because this film is stunningly beautiful. It's something that really floored me, especially when I then found out what the budget was. Like, there's no way in hell that you could have told me while I was watching it that this film was made for a total of under $22 million.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
The special effects is amazing. It's a big budget film on a TV budget.
Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, the film itself is 2 hours and 2 hours and 16 minutes long. So take out the credits, you're looking at about 2 hours 5, 2 hours 10 minutes. And so first of all, every single 10 minutes, you're increasing the amount that you're spending on cast, crew, all of that stuff, just in general, especially for something like this where the set design needs to be really good, the costumes need to be on point. There are many things. For instance, Clerks, made on a relatively shoestring budget, filmed in black and white because they couldn't afford to do it in color. Recorded with a bunch of Kevin Smith's friends agreeing to be in it. Recorded at night at the place that he worked during the day. It's something like that. Yeah, you can get away with making a hour and a half long film on little money. Something like this, every single minute is equating to a significant amount of money. So yeah, taking that into account, they needed to pay the main talent, and then having to go to the visual effects studio with, I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess probably half the budget, I think, would have fallen on the visual effects. So think about that. About $10 million is the amount that was spent on visual effects for this film, and I think they got at least double that in value. Because this film looks so good, and the only thing that I found somewhat funny is that I was actually watching this waiting for that Firefly thing where the camera is sort of trying to catch up and focus on the thing. Because so many of the shots felt like it could have been taken from Firefly. Just again, it's mostly the aesthetic and all of that stuff from it. However, there was none of the we're gonna do this we gotta find them, there they are, track in. Like, no, every single shot is crisp and you can see everything that's going on. And again, if you think about that, that means all of this time was it had to be rendered. They had to do all of this great work on it. It has to stand up to being seen on a big screen. It's something that I think I'm going to keep going back to and rewatching just to get that visual overload again and again of just how stunning it is. And again, without going into spoilers, I will say that the soldiers looked phenomenal. Even when the helmet goes up, it doesn't look bad. It's so fascinating. And the only question that I have left really is something that we very, very tangentially mentioned but not actually touched on, which is what do you think of the MacGuffin being just this young girl, and the several misdirects that happen around that and everything, because it's something that definitely from the trailer did a good job at sort of red herring it a little bit, and then in the film itself, as you're watching it, you're never 100% sure what's going on until about halfway through, when it comes to Dorothy. But yeah, what did you think of that? And was there any part of that felt at all forced to you? Because and I know that might seem like a leading question, and I have my own answer to it and all that. But what did you think of, rather than having them go and get the Infinity Stones or go and get this thing, or just happening to uncover this evil guy's plot that they're just gonna foil? What did you think of them having this little girl being the thing that they needed to protect?
It was kind of like, I felt almost as if they did a great job in making everybody feel, or not feel, but see that they felt outgunned, and in turn making them feel like the underdog. Which, if you know, I mean, this is great because everybody likes to root for the underdog. And I think maybe that would be the best way that writers would have come up with a story to make it feel as it turned out to be. Because I felt rooting for them, even though, we continue to think of alternatives of what they could have done differently than what they did in the movie. But in the end, it felt as if I was rooting for them nonetheless. I don't know if that answers your question. It's kind of like I almost felt that the formula was right. It still didn't take away from the fact that I was kind of arguing with the TV.
No, as I say, it pretty much answers the question. It's something that, and I'll say, the reason that I was asking the question the way I was is because when I was thinking about it, just from the trailer, the only problem I had when I was looking at it and going, okay, like this could be interesting, is when it was like, okay, so this girl that, at least from the trailer, is this robot or android that is the MacGuffin. That is the thing that the plot centers around, and so on. And so I was like, okay, let's see what happens here, because it could be well done, or it could be literally the like the Ashley from Resident Evil 4, where it's just this side character that is being dragged around and constantly getting them in trouble. It's like, oh, for God's sake, come on. And I really, really appreciated the fact that as the film went on, like, she was no longer the MacGuffin. There was so much character development with her and with the other people on the team. There was so much plot progression that you really began to understand what was going on at, again, pretty much the perfect pacing level for something like this. Because it very easily could have been rushed, and it very easily could have, from even several directors that I can think of now in Western cinema, where they might just want to take a little longer. They might want to let some scenes go on longer than they need to, or throw in a couple of scenes elsewhere that, might add to some of the other characters, or might give you a little bit more of Sullivan or something like that, but would really mess with the pacing. And yet this film, pretty much like with The Martian, actually, I don't think there's a single scene in this film that is wasted. I think every single scene, every single little bit of character progression or development, every single thing that we see is either completely relevant to the plot or completely relevant to the character. And yeah, I can't think of any excess that is in there. So,
I was just going to say, I like to call this the perfectly peeled onion. They were peeling all the layers at the right time and at the right moment. Because this thing, when you start, you think it's this thing, and then oh no, it's this other thing. And then, oh no, it's this other thing. And it's just like, it's kind of like almost as if they're guiding you through the story. And I think it was clever. That's why I like to call it the perfectly peeled onion.
Yeah, it something that, again, it was just such a refreshing change of pace from Western cinema. And, nothing against Western cinema. It's my absolute favorite film of all time is, and probably always will be, The Shawshank Redemption. And so many films that I've seen recently are just awesome, just amazing. And I will champion several directors that I like for until the end of time. But this thing, basically, for us, I live in America. I only have access to mostly American like cinema trailers and things like that at this point in time. So I was completely unaware that this film was coming until a few months before it was dropping on Netflix, and it just came out of left field for me. And then when I sat down to watch it, and I stayed up way too late to finish it, because I was not finishing this film. And I realized then, I realized as that was happening that I was like, okay, I like this film. I absolutely could have stopped watching it about 30 minutes before it was over, gone to bed, and got up the next day. I have about 25-30 minutes from when my wife and daughter leave to drop her off at the daycare, my wife gets to work, to when I need to start work at my home office that I had set up. So I absolutely could have finished it this morning when I was well rested. I wasn't going to do that. like, I was finishing this film. So, yeah, I think basically all of that being said, like, I can think of no other way to finish out this review than to say the following two things, which is number one, if you have not seen this film and us talking about it without giving away any of the actual real spoilers of this film, which is something I am genuinely shocked that I've done for a review of these films, like, watch it. Like, seriously, I urge everyone listening to this to watch this either tonight, tomorrow night, tomorrow in the day, whenever it is that makes the most sense for you within the next few days, watch this film. You will not be disappointed. And number two, I think that this has probably been one of my favorite films to discuss, just because it's been one of my favorite films to watch in the last decade, I think. I think I would put this on par personally with the likes of Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And anyone that's been listening to this for a while, and anyone that has listened to me talking about that film with Bebop, yeah, that's one of my favorite films of all time, and I think this film's up there. Just in terms of the visuals, the characters, the score, like, just everything in this film is just so well done. And as I said before, and as you said as well, like, I'm gonna rewatch this thing soon, and then I'm probably gonna make this an annual watch at the very least, because like, just the experience that I had watching this was a real roller coaster.
Oh yes.
And I haven't had that in a very long time. So yeah, no, I cannot do anything else other than just urge you to watch this as soon as you possibly can. And I'm gonna toss it over to you, you there, Robert. So what would your final thoughts be for this?
Well, I was gonna end my final thought by saying that there's only one regret that I have about this film, and is that it ended up on my list, and now is when I get to watch it. That is the only regret. This movie is that kind of movie that I should have watched as soon as it came out, but you know how list goes and life gets in the way. And by saying this, I'm saying a lot. I mean, if you haven't watched this film, you should go watch it now.
Yeah, everyone that has this film sitting in the list, it needs to go to the front of that list now.
Yeah. You'll thank us. You'll thank us later.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Obviously, if you're someone that prefers period dramas over sci-fi, okay, you can give this one a pass. For now. Once you finish watching Bridgerton and all of those other things, and you've reached a point where you're like, okay, now what should I watch? Maybe shove it on. You might enjoy it. You never know. But for anyone that enjoys sci-fi, for anyone that enjoys any of the type of cinema or even TV shows coming out from Korea and the other Eastern markets as well, like, seriously, give this a watch. It is probably one of the best pieces of art I've seen coming out of that side of the world in quite some time. And
I will add,
so yeah,
I will add to that. If you already like Korean TV, if you like K-drama, you already like this movie. So take it from someone that loves K-drama. So
yeah, well, there you go. I'm not sure there's much else we can really say about this film without A, getting into spoilers, and B, just repeating ourselves ad nauseum. And as much as I am known to do that, I will say we can probably jump ship here. So if the people that are listening have decided that they wish to, where would they be able to find you on the interwebs?
We are Sci-Fi Remnant. We're a podcast about sci-fi properties altogether. It could be film, TV, books, games, and we're everywhere. Wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever, we're everywhere. So you can reach out through Twitter at Sci-Fi Remnant if you'd like to reach out to us personally.
Yes, and do that. They are lovely fellas.
Thank you.
No problem at all. And as I said at the beginning, if you want to find Blockbusters everywhere, literally just search Blockbusters. You'll find us. When Google says, "Oh, did you mean Blockbusters?" just say no, and then you'll find us. But yes, do if you enjoyed this show or any of the other shows and you've been completely putting it off because, hey, you don't think about it. Trust me, I do that as well. If you could give us an honest rating, I'm not going to sit here and say you need to give us 5 stars, because if you feel we're a 4-star podcast, then I'm not going to be the one to tell you, no, absolutely not. Do not put that. We live for honest feedback, and one of the things I love about Twitter and everything is that people can interact with you and give you their honest feedback, and I absolutely welcome that, and I would happily have a discussion with anyone about anything that's been said in this episode or any of the other episodes. So do reach out, give us a rating, review on wherever it is you find this podcast, and then go over to Sci-Fi Remnant and give them a rating review too, because hey, they deserve it.
Thank you.
And no problem at all. But yes, I think with all of that being said, I have been Paul.
And this is Robert.
And I'll see you next time. Bye.
In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Hang on a minute, lads. I've got a great idea.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.